Hello everyone, I'm Chris. I'm the team rector of the Golden Cap Benefice, and welcome to our midweek message this week. I'm really glad that you've been able to tune in. I wanted to share with you this week an anecdote that I've been thinking an awful lot about recently, and I'll explain why. And it concerns a wedding blessing that I was asked to conduct that was planned for the 10th of July. It was set up a long time ago. I was in touch with a couple last year, and they planned this date in, and what they were planning originally was that they wanted to bring all their guests, about 120 of them, to have their marriage blessed. They were marrying at a registry office a few days earlier, and they wanted a wedding blessing in church in Monkton Wild, and they were going to bring their 120 guests to Monkton Wild and then bus them back to their reception venue, which was a marquee in a field between Monkton Wild and Wootton Fitzpaine. So plans were in place for that, and I was very much looking forward to it. It would have been my first in my role here as team rector, so you always remember your firsts, and I was very much looking forward to it. But unfortunately, you'll remember that at the beginning of July, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, had pushed back the plans for the final easing of the lockdown measures. And I had to have one of those awkward conversations with the couple where I rang them and said that on their proposed wedding date of the 10th of July, it would actually be illegal for us to cram 120 people into Monkton Wild Church, because at that time we were still required to keep socially distancing measures in force. So I had to break the bad news that unfortunately we wouldn't be able to have the blessing in church, and there was an awkward moment as we discussed that. But out of that awkward moment came an opportunity, because the couple said to me that they were planning to go ahead with their reception. And when I asked how that was possible, they said the rules in force were that if you take the sides off the marquee, it counts as an outdoor event. And that meant that they were able to legally gather at that time as an outdoor event. So then came the opportunity, as we explored together, whether it might be possible, rather than the guests come to the church to see the wedding blessing there, maybe the wedding blessing could take place at the field. Well, had it been a wedding, I would have had to have said no, but as it was the marriage blessing, I said I would be delighted to undertake the blessing at the reception venue. And so it was that on Saturday the 10th of July, I turned up, having had a rehearsal first, to do a wedding blessing in this glorious field. People sat on straw bales watching this couple commit their marriage to God and for me to bless it, overlooking Charmouth. The weather had been a bit hit and miss in the few days prior, but I'm glad to say the weather kept fine, because everybody blames the vicar when the weather's bad. You know, couldn't you have had a word, vicar? Well, I did have a word, and the weather was good. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful occasion. And I've been thinking about it a lot, because it was an occasion where the family, the guests, were not able to come to church, but the church was able to go to them. And I've been thinking about that because in our workshops of late that we've been undertaking as part of our Journeying to Our Heart vision building exercise, we've been thinking about, what it means to be church, and looking at a different way to think about church, because let's face it, until very recently, the Church of England has always been able to rely on people coming to us. It's what people did. Had their babies baptized at 6 weeks old. They married in church. Funerals were in church. People came to church on Sundays, sometimes twice, sometimes even 3 times. Maybe you were one of those. Church was just part of the fabric of people's everyday lives. Though we may wish it was so, those days are gone. We must face up to the fact that those days are gone. It's sad. It's not anybody's fault. It's part of the situation we find ourselves in, but church is no longer part of the everyday fabric of people's lives. And so we've been thinking about different ways of viewing church, and this seemed to me to be a good way of thinking about it. I've been dwelling on that metaphor of, church going to them when they were unable to come to us. And it was all the better for it. It was such a lovely occasion in such lovely surroundings, beauty all around us, and a real sense of God's presence there with us in the outdoors. It reminded me of the day I came to be interviewed for my post here. And I had the usual tour of different churches in the morning, and I remember chatting to a particular person who shall remain nameless, and I asked what the relations were like with the village at large and the different organisations in the village. And I was told that, relationships were really good. But, this person said, can we get them across the threshold? Now, if I was feeling really brave, I would have said, in which direction? Do you mean that the people from the village won't cross the threshold into church? Or do you mean that the people in the church won't cross the threshold to engage with those outside it? I wasn't brave enough on the day I was being interviewed, so I think I kept quiet. But that's what I was thinking, because this is the way we need to begin thinking about church. We can no longer expect people to cross the threshold to come to us. So we must begin to think, how do we cross the threshold to engage with others and see what emerges from that interaction, and whether a church might gather or congregate or be built where they are rather than where we are. These are some of the things to be thinking about and praying about in the days ahead. So please pray with us, and God bless you today.